What do we mean by death to the world? The world is the general name for all the passions. When we wish to call them passions by a common name, we call them the world. But when we wish to distinguish them by their special names, we call them passions. The passions are the following: desire for possessions, bodily pleasure from which comes sexual passion, love of honor which gives rise to envy, lust for power, arrogance and pride of position, the craving to adorn oneself with luxurious clothes and vain ornaments, the itch for human glory, which is the source of rancor and resentment, physical fear. Where these passions cease to be active, there the world is dead. Someone has said of the saints that while alive, they were dead. For though living in the flesh, they did not live for the flesh. See for which of these passions you are alive. Then you will know how far you are alive to the world and how far you are dead to it. The last true rebellion is death to the world. To be crucified to the world, and the world to us. With the seed of dissatisfaction deeply planted in the heart of today's society, rebellion has been a small key to unlock the doors of change. But the rebellion that the world has known is not a fullness of true rebellion. Since our times have come to a point where things can't get much worse, the few remaining lovers of truth must search deeper into themselves and deeper into truth itself. But to get to this point, a revolution must take place. A revolution in the hearts of these lovers of truth. A revolution that annihilates all earthly and worldly thinking, and that nurtures a way of thinking that is not of this world. Because that which is of the flesh is of the flesh, and that which is of the spirit . There is a grave necessity for this internal revolution, for only by this progress can be made. For how can one help a world with festering wounds until one mends one's own wounds? After this spiritual surgery has taken place, true rebellion is an ideal that is attainable. In this age of confusion and destruction, the necessary distinction between good versus evil has been deathly confused. The result of this is a philosophy of nothingness, that no ultimate truth exists, nihilism. There is neither love or hatred, good or bad, life or death. The result of this is a soul-destroying idea that even God does not exist. The natural reaction to all of this is an internal rebellion of the soul, for the soul cannot deny its own existence. At this point, an all-out unseen warfare is fully engaged. In the case of the lover of truth, the rebellion manifests itself externally in a rebellion against this corrupt world. This is good, but there are too many people who just stop at this point. Without searching any further, how can one expect to uncover the answers? True rebellion will stop at nothing in the fight for the good of the world, for the good of others, and for the good of itself in whatever way it manifests itself. It is necessary to wage a revolution in the heart in order to conquer evil with good, so as to have a rebellion in truth. This is the kind of rebellion that must take place, or else it isn't a rebellion at all.
I don't know, just more like ready for it, because like we're not living in a stupid fantasy of fancy cars and everything. And just like trying to pretend it's not there, because it is there. We face more reality, I think, than normal people.
Mm-hmm. So maybe the world will improve because...
It might. I don't know how, but...
Because you're
I mean, I
have
don't think...
more sense of reality than...
Right, I mean, I don't think it'll, like, blow up or something, but I mean, the way it is just... I mean, the way the inflation and everything, I mean... There'll either be a depression or a war or something.
There once was a counterculture with the sole purpose of rebelling against the world. This counterculture was wise in the sense that its philosophy was based on recognizing the corruption. In this lies half the truth. It represents more truth than the world would ever dare to acknowledge, but this counterculture must not stop at this. It must seek unto death the ultimate in truth if it is to accomplish that which it first set out to do. To care for and tend to the world's wounds. This counterculture of punk was something that a handful of truth seekers could easily identify with. For it is very clear that the world is coming to a close. To be a true punk is to have nothing to do with that element which kills, hurts, causes pain, but to cauterize the wounds. To be in the world, but not of the world. In actuality, the true ideals of punk have yet to be introduced, as does the fullness of their rebellion. These ideals and this philosophy are the world's best kept secret, a secret that has been in the souls of those few lovers of truth ever since the beginning of time, in the hearts and souls of the true punks. The monks. Monks are those who for thousands of years have rebelled against the corruption of this world by severing all chains that bind themselves to the world. To live in caves, in holes in the ground, and to dwell in deserts. To eat maybe once a day, or even once a week. To wear the same clothes until they completely fall apart, and to rarely sleep because the cause is more important than the pleasures of this world. In these deprivations and sufferings, they would realize one thing. There is no real suffering at all than to not know God. This is the last true rebellion. To forsake the world and to embrace God alone.
Κύριε Ιησού Χριστέ, η αιτιολόγη του Θεού ελέησόν μου τον αμαρτωλό. Κύριε Ιησού Χριστέ.
Beneath the brittle surface, the vain, self-interested clinging love, the maddening longing, which only obscures what lies below, there is a silently flowing river, a river of compassion, bowels of mercy, a feeling of other people's pain, flowing into a vast, vast ocean of sadness. Although it is a sadness, one enters it willingly with joy, for there is such a tenderness in its pain. And at last, in the sadness, there is perfect freedom. This is the love that never dies, a proof of immortality. This is the pain that the crucified one embraced willingly, sharing our pain. This is the cross he asks us to bear. This is the death he asks us to die. And at last, in this death, there is perfect peace.
You have one unheard message. First unheard message.
At the time of acute self-consciousness at the birth of adulthood, when the soul is still innocent and open, has not been hardened, and the world is a big apple with possibilities that are seemingly limitless, and relationships can seem to be so perfect and so easily perfect, and the soul has just been awakened to the intense sense of personhood, selfhood, and asks, for the first time, the question of who he is and why he's here. The soul is wide open, and it seeks to go beyond itself. The person feels deeply and intensely, having not yet learned to block and hide these feelings which later prove too painful. And he longs to share this feeling, this self-awareness, this intensity, this pain with others, and to feel what others feel. Everything is poured out freely, sometimes too freely. And there is no attempt to guard one's inner world from being trampled on. The child who has never been hit by a car, if he is not told of the dangers, will have no fear of walking into a busy street. However, when the person gets older, as time passes, the perfect soulmate relationships which began so intensely like a wondrous blossoming flower become because there was nothing higher to hold them together. And the seemingly limitless possibilities which present themselves in youth become smaller. One possibility closing itself off after another once one goes further on a certain path, for each person can only take one path at a time. And then occurs what has formerly been feared and rejected. A layer forms on top of the raw person. And it cannot be helped, for pure vulnerability is too painful. Attempt at an answer. At the time of acute self-consciousness and the awareness of the eternal question, why, the person must be able to direct that self-awareness and painful yearning to something higher than himself, to God, who became flesh and suffered as we do. It is not enough to pour this painful yearning out to another person. That may help for a time, but it is not enough for eternity. The human soul seeks perfection, and there is nothing perfect except God. Other human beings, even if they seem perfect at first, always turn out to be imperfect, and that can be a great source of disillusionment. A human being can be a vehicle to reach the end, God, and almost always such a human being is needed. But that person cannot be seen as an end in himself. In our postmodern age, when youth have been denied a knowledge of God, the perfection is usually at first sought in one or usually several human beings. or in unworthy, lesser vehicles, wealth, beauty, fame. Again, one must turn one's painful feelings of self-knowledge and longing to go outside oneself, to God, for only He has the infinite love to meet them. We know God through this very pain. Remembrance of God is pain of heart endured in the spirit of devotion, but he who forgets God becomes self-indulgent and insensitive. No one achieved anything without pain of heart. The inward pain and intensity experienced in adolescence is not only good, it is even vital for the future development of the soul. It's drawing closer to God. It is a moment of truth, and that is why it is so important that these strong feelings, that all or nothing, I won't settle for second best feeling of God-given youthful idealism, be quickly channeled to Him who is not second best, but who is ultimate. If this would happen, more youth of today would turn to monasticism, which is the all or nothing life, not settling for second best, but giving up everything for a higher end, the kingdom not of this world. But there must be strength and backbone in young people to keep alive the flame of their idealistic yearning when all kinds of worldly tares attempt to choke out the newly sprouted seeds. If one channels one's pain, self-awareness, etc. upwards, there is possibility for endless growth in the spirit. However, if one keeps it flowing on a horizontal level, it will lead to stagnation, despair, or selling out. Even if one can keep going, always trying to be intense, real, if there's nothing else than that, he will just keep going around and around and around and around and around and around in circles, not getting anywhere. Life cannot be imbued with meaning simply by attempting to live it intensely. The answer, the truth, is God, who was nailed to the cross, to whom may the youth of today churn in their pain of heart, so that they will grow not just into a boring worldly adult, but into a saint, growing into the likeness of God, and will continue growing not just into middle or old age, but throughout eternity. In the words of monk Seraphim Rose, a misfit in the modern world who went through years of living hell before finding the way out, Christ is the only exit from this world. All other exits, sexual rapture, political utopia, economic independence, are but blind alleys in which rot the corpses of the many who have tried them.
End of message. To delete this message, press 7. To save it in the archives, press 9. To hear more options. Message will be saved for 30 days.
Do you know the central square in Tbilisi? During the demonstration, the government speakers and the speaker's rostrum stood there. Behind them, on the building of the executive committee of the Communist Party, there always hung portraits of the party leaders in full figure, 2 floors in height. At the peak of the demonstration, when the entire square was packed with people, and while a member of the government was delivering a speech, suddenly the gigantic portrait of Stalin burst into flames. Father Gabriel had gained entrance into the upper floor of the executive committee building. opened a window and poured kerosene on the back of the portraits.
Is this a legend?
Some things, of course, have been enshrouded by legend. But he burned the portraits. Lenin's portrait burned immediately. Horror came over the square. They all froze from fear and everything became still. While the pictures of the leaders were in flames, from the second floor window Father Gabriel gave a sermon. The Lord said, "Thou shalt not make unto thee idols or any graven images. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I am the Lord your God. Thou shalt have no other gods." Exodus 20, verse 3 to 5. The Georgians have always been Christians. So why are you bowing down before idols? Jesus Christ died and on the third day rose again. But your cast idols will never be resurrected. Even during their life they were dead. Evidently he also said another phrase, and perhaps more. They brought him down. They brought in some fire engines and raised ladders. But when they brought him down, the crowd fell upon him. They kicked him, hit him with rifle butts, flailed him with fire hoses. They screamed, "Let me finish off that louse."
How could they, how did they let him, why wasn't he shot?
The reason they didn't shoot him is that they carried him off almost like a corpse. His face couldn't be made out. His skull was fractured and there were 17 fractured bones in his body. He lay almost unconscious for a month, but he was treated carefully so that investigations could be conducted. It seemed that they were going to arrange a short trial, but they couldn't even get the condemned man onto a stretcher. He didn't respond to the treatment at all. The entire time he was at death's door, but he didn't die. This is what I was told. I had only just been born at the time. Beyond that, I don't know anything with certitude. Father Gabriel won't speak with anyone about it. Either it dragged on until the Khrushchev amnesties, or they tried for a long time to uncover a conspiracy to get out of him the names of the conspirators. Then, either he was certified as psychologically not responsible for his actions, or they helped him, or it became too unpleasant to the authorities. When within several years they released him, he was suspended from priestly ministry. Not only in the church, but for 10 years' time they wouldn't hire him anywhere. It is fortunate for him that there was a house, that he had a mother, the old woman who opened the gate for you.
Ja, men dildo.
Both of them lived on his pension. Since he was a certified lunatic, he was allotted by the state 17 rubles a month. Everywhere people knew and were afraid of him.
Doggy. Oddziel.
At first he wandered among the villages and was hired to guard the vineyards or to tend the fire in churches. Then his mother became paralyzed from all the trauma and he could no longer go anywhere. For several years he could be found sitting at the portico of some church with an outstretched hand.
დაიწყოს დღევანდელი დღიდან ყველაფერი. საქართველოში ყველა სულ დღევანდელ დღეს.
granted the ultimate privilege of hanging on the cross, and the tears of joyful, liberating pain flood your eyes, and you taste the sweetness and the perfect freedom of dying to this life, then you no longer feel anger or rage, and you know what it means to forgive everyone. And everything. You see how he, when nailed to the cross, could have forgiven everyone who has ever lived and ever will live. In a sense, nothing has changed with you. All the good in you remains. All the evil in you remains. All the passions remain and the struggle goes on. But now, you know. You know that there is nothing more sublime, beautiful, and profound than the cross. Now you know what it means that he spilled his blood for you in agony of pain, which even he was afraid and sorrowful to endure. And when he asks you to drink his blood and eat his flesh, you are ready to shed your blood too, to take up your cross and follow him, to share in what he is, in his ultimate liberating love. A love that is pain, but a pain that is at peace. And a peace that surpasses all understanding. And you see other human beings around you, and you still see their weaknesses. But now you feel such compassion and forgiveness for their failings, as if they were like small children, and you yourself feel like a child. And so you go on, still as the same person, you fall and get up again, but now all the transient things in life are seen as secondary, and you know that they are not everything that your soul truly desires for eternity. And above them stands that transcendent love, the ultimate act of love that the universe had never known before and will never know again. God became flesh, mocked, spat upon, tortured, and crucified by the creatures who he himself formed from the dust, and he suffered it all for their sake.